How's it going, guys? It's Cole with See-Through Panel showing off Gamayun Tales 1 and 2 by Alexander Utkin, published by No Brow, and retailing for $20 US. As always, I will not be spoiling the books at all. I'll just be flipping through them. But if you're worried about seeing something that you may view as a spoiler, just read these and then come back and we could talk about it. These are collections of Russian folklore and mythology as told by Alexander Utkin and translated by Lada Morozova, I think. These were something I really wanted to check out ever since I saw Utkin's style, and I got them earlier this year and I just haven't gotten around to checking them out until recently. I read them both. Pretty short reads, but very, very fun. Really, really nice end papers here, showing off a lot of characters and design. These are all ages appropriate books. I think the Amazon listing said like 10 and up. That sounds about right to me. There's just something that would maybe scare a super young kid, but in general, these are definitely all ages appropriate. It's a good preview of a bunch of the characters with labels. Even in book 1 here, showing off some characters that will appear in the second book. Table of contents. You're going to notice immediately that Utkin's style is very textured, I would say, is the right word. It looks as if it was done by kind of like colored pencil type things on textured paper. You can see every line in detail, but it also works as one coherent piece. It's really, really cool and interesting style that I haven't seen from a lot of other artists. One of my favorite things about this book is that the first story told in book 1 is then spun off of and told into a different story, and then is finished as the final story told in book 2. So it has a nice cohesive circular feeling. And just like that, a lot of the stories in this reference each other, and I think could be read pretty much in any order. This was originally published as hardcovers of 3 different books in this first one. The King of Birds, The Water Spirit, and Tina of the Lake. So that you could just read any of those hardcovers in any order if those are what you have. Obviously, in this format, it gives you a nice order to follow. Really, really good color work. Super fun. I would say, if I had to describe the visuals with one word, I would say it's fun. It's very interesting to look at no matter what's happening on the page. Like, this is a very Lion King-esque image to me. There's also, as a aside, this showed off that there's a lot of things from Russian folklore that I think kind of made their way into other mediums, like this. Let's find it. This guy here. He's a house spirit, and this looks like the little people from Spirited Away to me, like the little guys that work at the boiler room. I don't know if that's actually the origin of those, but this looks like it to me, and it has a similar kind of purpose in the story. There's a lot of really cool designs in here, and I probably won't be able to find an exact page for it, but if you read comics a lot, you know that there's a thing that is very common, that artists will take a panel and reuse it later in the story, one for one. And that is not the case with Alexander Utkin. He will completely redraw a panel, just whole cloth. He will redraw the entire thing just to show you a previous panel from a previous story. So I think there's a couple instances of this, and I won't be able to find them, unfortunately, now that I'm recording, of course. I really should take better notes, but that's all right. I just wanted to show off the wonderful colors in here, very vibrant. It's really toothy paper in these books. You can maybe hear me moving my hand across it. It's not smooth paper like you'd see from a Marvel or DC collected edition. It's very rough, textured feeling, just like how the art looks like it was made on textured paper, at least to me. not an art style I can say I've seen a lot of similar styles. I don't think this is just so Little Mermaid, this story. I can't say I've seen anything that looks like this. It's very much cartooning to the nth degree. Very expressive faces, but also very creative designs. I'm going to show off my favorite design. I've got two things that are my favorite that I can't break the tie. Loving this design right here. Fantastic design there. And then my other favorite would be in book 2. That is this guy, the Guardian. Maybe if I can find a closer detailed shot here. That's actually like a living being, not a statue. And it guards the... There's a picture of it. It's almost got these teeth lining the insides. It's a guardian of the area. There's its feet. And that was really, really cool. I just love his designs in this book. Every little thing he does. Let's see here. These riders of Baba Yaga's floating, I guess she calls it a mortar, I think. You can even see like how it works kind of in the world. Like she spins this little top underneath it. She lights the fire and then we're off to the races. And that's really fun to see. It definitely feels like a lived-in world. Like he's very familiar with these. Maybe he even was told these as a kid. Maybe he grew up on this type of thing. I'm not exactly sure. But it definitely feels like he has an intimate knowledge. There's the origin of the hat that I was talking about. It definitely feels like he's got a very intimate knowledge of these stories and just draws the hell out of them. Just really shows off here. There's another great design. The only thing that I mentioned earlier that would be problematic for an all ages book, I think, would be this sequence here. I mean, there's no blood or anything, but it is a guy's head being put on a spike and then aging like this. It's been a long time since I was a kid, so I don't know if this would bother like a 10-year-old. It's not hyper violent or anything, but it is a bit... I'm not sure. I really don't know. But I still think this is definitely an all ages book. It's got very, very fun dialogue. We have a narrator for every story that's constantly filling us in on little details. Named Gamayun, the namesake. She's as she says, a human-faced bird from Slavic mythology. And she knows everything. So, I also just love the covers. They're just full of characters. Also, spot varnish and little raised, really nice design. No Brow puts out really, really nice books. I don't have enough No Brow books on my shelf. I'm going to try and rectify that. But yeah, here's another of the covers. A lot of characters you probably recognize. I'll talk a little bit about the introductory story, just because I want to talk a little bit more about the stories in here, because they're very, very cool. There's a golden apple. There's a garden housing golden apples that make people young again. They can cure illnesses. Someone breaks in, steals one, and in that time, a mouse is able to get his hands on one who lives in the garden. And then we completely dodge their story. The man who's stealing them, we don't know what it's about, and that ends up being the final story in the second book. So you wait a long time to see that, but it's all very loosely connected. I say loosely because it's kind of put as an aside. The connections are not important or vital to the story, but it actually makes a lot of sense, and it's very cohesive. So it's not loose in that sense, but it is very not necessary to the story if you miss those kind of details, which I don't think you will. I think it's very, very obvious. But the mouse gets the apple, eats it without the bird, his friend, and then the bird goes and basically reports him to the king of the animals, who doesn't do anything. So the bird says, I'll go to the king of the birds, starts a war between the birds and the other animals, and it just escalates very quickly. And that ends up introducing us to another one of our main characters. Here And it just goes and goes and goes. And our main dude here ends up going to see a burning stump with a snake stuck on it and saves the snake. And then later in the second one, after you've almost entirely forgotten about that, the snake comes back into play and you see how it got there. You see how the snake got in that position, and then you see our guy. And it's just very, very cool. Those little rewarding moments make it a very satisfying read. It's also a very quick read. You could definitely read each of these books in a couple hours, I would think. It's really not anything too complex. The storytelling is very simple, but very effective. I did want to show off not a ton of action, like fighting in this book, but I did really want to show off an example of great action here. A little bit of the DeLuca effect. So we got characters multiple times on the same page, in the same panel, moving around. I'll get it closer here in a second, but I want to show off the whole thing at once. It's just really shows off that Utkin can do this sort of thing. He's not doing it a lot or often, but he's doing it very, very well. The lines lead your eye through the page. Everything's very, very easy to tell what's going on. Comprehensible. A lot of artists, I think, you get lost in here and it wouldn't draw the eye correctly. I mean, obviously it's a very simple page. You could just say, oh, they're fighting, and then move to the next page. But having your eye drawn through all of this is really cool. I love the way he works with these wisps, these motion blurs here. And once again, the colors, the intersecting of those two colors, really cool. I mean, even if he was just a colorist for other books, I would read him just for his name. He just does such beautiful work. He does everything top to bottom, obviously, besides the translation. So he's lettering it, he's coloring it, he's drawing it, he's writing it. And it's very, very admirable to me that he would do something like this. I'm just going to keep flipping a little bit through here. There's three writers and their designs that I showed off earlier. I didn't show off this middle one here, but you get the idea. I also love what's coming up here is this design, this character. The multicolored eyes is just so... It works very well. These colors are... When you think of fire, you don't usually think of like a greenish yellow. Is that chartreuse? I don't know. But you don't really think of that type of thing very often. And this is this story reoccurring from the first book, and it all just ties very nicely together. There's that skull of that guy who's not all ages. He's got his own backstory. This skull has its own backstory. And yeah, I'm just going to go on and on if I keep talking about this. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. I would definitely recommend it for anybody. If you're reading it to kids, I think it'd be perfect for a younger kid. Even for an adult, though, like I think it's awesome, awesome stuff. If you're into mythology, as I consider myself into mythology, it's not like my main thing, but I find it very interesting, and I'd never considered Russian mythology or Slavic mythology, so it was really cool to learn about Baba Yaga and things that I've heard of, but didn't really know a lot about, and this is a great way to learn those things, so I was very, very happy to see that. Obviously, these stories were available in separate volumes: The King of Birds, The Water Spirit, Tina of the Lake, Vasilisa, I think, and The Doll, and The Golden Apples would be the individual 5 volumes. The Golden Apples is broken up into 2 volumes. You can see the separations just on the side here with these yellow pages. They look like this. There's that phenomenal design. Very Mignola looking flame to me. Mignola design in general, and the colors, like, tell me that's not beautiful. The purple and green is not something I would have expected from a like cavernous wall there. But yeah, so the Golden Apples takes most of this book, in its own story. So yeah, it's actually from here to the end, whereas this one is, you can see the separations, 1, 2, and 3. So a little bit different kind of frequency of story in the second book, but it works out super well. And the final story, The Golden Apples, ended up being my favorite. Probably it being more long form makes you more attached to the characters. That's probably why, but there was some phenomenal characters in the first book as well, and I said I would stop rambling, and I didn't, so I'm going to be done now. If you've heard about this, or you know about these folktales even without reading it, let me know what you guys think about that. It's really, really cool to me. I would love to see more from this creator in the future. I'm not sure what he's doing. I'm going to look into that. It also has a great interview with him at the end where they ask him 5 questions relating to the book and his cartooning. So, anyway, I am done. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Peace.